Did you see this new study on ECVM, or equine complex vertebral malformation? It's been getting a lot of attention online, with some people calling it a total game changer. So let's take a look at what the study actually found. So the researchers were trying to answer a very specific question. Can veterinarians reliably identify one of the most severe forms of this malformation, known as a grade 4 asplasia of the caudal lamina ventralis of C6, on radiographs taken in a live horse? Now, ECM itself is not new. Veterinarians and researchers have been identifying these variations for years. What makes this study important is that it helps bridge the gap between what anatomists were seeing in cadaver studies and what veterinarians can identify in a living horse. So previous anatomical studies have described this severe form of the malformation and documented changes in the surrounding structures. However, the specific radiographic landmarks needed to reliably identify this grade 4 variation had not been really clearly described. This study, though, does that. The researchers identified specific bony landmarks that can help veterinarians recognize this severe form of the malformation on radiographs, and then confirmed those findings against the actual anatomy of the horses. That may not sound very exciting, but it actually is an important step. The better we can identify and characterize these anatomical variations in living horses, the better we can investigate whether they are contributing to the horse's clinical signs. But what I found most interesting was not the missing bone itself, it was what they found around it. So in these severe cases, they didn't just find changes in the vertebra, of course they did. They also found alterations in the longus colli muscle, which is a muscle that helps stabilize and support the neck. They found variations involving the foramen transversarium, which is the opening through which the vertebral artery travels. And they found variations involving the vertebral artery itself. In other words, this wasn't simply a missing piece of bone or a malformation of the bone. There were changes in the surrounding anatomy as well. And I think this is where the conversation becomes super interesting. The question may not simply be, is the bone malformation there, or is it abnormal? The question becomes, how might these changes in the architecture of the neck influence the structures around it? So how might it influence muscular function? How might it influence stability? How might it influence movement? And how might it influence compensation patterns, especially over time? Those are the questions worth asking. At the same time, we need to be careful not to overstate what this study found. This study did not prove that every horse with ECVM has pain. It did not prove that every horse with ECVM will stumble. It did not prove that every behavior issue is caused by a neck malformation. In fact, we know there are horses with these variations that appear to function quite well. So association is not the same as causation, and horses will have varying degrees of a malformation. What this study does provide is a better diagnostic tool. If a horse has unresolved neck pain, unexplained performance issues, neurologic concerns, or symptoms that warrant further investigation, veterinarians now have a clearer radiographic method for identifying one of the most severe forms of this condition in a living horse. And that is super valuable, because good medicine isn't about proving one theory right or wrong. It's about gathering better information so that we can ask better questions, make better decisions, and ultimately provide better care for the horse standing right in front of us.